Welcome to the Ultimate Sports Network. My name is Frank Gordon. We are on the Art of Sport program, and we have three guests with us who are going to tell us what they're about. So we're going to get into the Negro Baseball League Museum and the artwork that's being done there and other things that are happening there as well. So let's start with Todd. Todd, introduce yourself, and we'll go from there.
All right, Frank, thank you so much. Thanks for having me on. Thank you for having us on. I'm Todd Radom. I am a designer, and I'm a writer and an author and a researcher. I've been working in professional sports for 30 years. Been involved with designing things for baseball for all this time, including commemorative logos, team identities, stuff like that. And we'll talk about what brings us together, but that's been the gist of my work. I've also had written 2 books, Winning Ugly, which is my loving homage to some of the most questionable uniforms in the history of Major League Baseball, and a book called Fabric of the Game, which is the stories behind the names and looks of every team in the history of the National Hockey League. And for our conversation, a great baseball history enthusiast, and the story of Josh Gibson and his Negro League players. This is what kind of brings us together. So that's me.
Okay. And next up, Chad.
You know what? I'm going to defer to Sean Gibson over here. I don't
Okay.
think anybody wants to meet me before Sean.
Okay.
Well, thanks, Frank, for having me. Todd, as always, good to see you guys. I'm the great-grandson of Josh Gibson. I run the Josh Gibson Foundation here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I've been running that for the past 17 years. And it's basically just keeping the legacy of Josh Gibson and other great Negro League baseball players alive. We have over 300 kids in our program, inner city kids. We have programs from academic programs to athletic programs, and also we give out scholarships. My role in this is, as we talked about, last year was the 100th anniversary of the Negro Leagues. Pandemic year, everything was kind of shut down. I met Todd. He did our Centennial logo, which he did a fabulous job on that. And I met Ted just based off some social media campaign stuff. And, right now we have a campaign going on. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but the MVP campaign that we have going on for Josh Gibson. But I'm just excited to be here with 2 of my good friends and talk more about the Negro Leagues and Josh Gibson and the work that we're doing here with the foundation.
Great. Chad?
Yeah, I am the great-grandson of Tom Richardson, so nobody cares. Nobody cares about that. So, I'm been in marketing most of my adult life, over 20 years. I've been in marketing and mostly at the enterprise level throughout my career. Did some really fun stuff with ESPN.com way back in the day when we were first getting started with online advertising. And over the course of my career, kind of concurrently with it, I've been doing a lot of community building and fundraising for a bunch of different organizations. And over the last 3 years, I've been developing a campaign that I looked at as both a small business development campaign as well as a marketing and awareness campaign and a fundraising campaign for Meals on Wheels, and was piloting that campaign really successfully here in Washington State. And then when COVID, hit, that campaign really got completely derailed. And I also have a small little baseball themed business called Curveball Keepsakes. And each day, once that pandemic hit, I struggled to continue supporting Meals on Wheels. But at the same time, I'm sitting here looking at all of this merchandise that I have sitting here for sale that I can't go sell at the markets. And I knew that I wasn't the only one. So I've been pretty involved over the last few years on Instagram, meeting a lot of different people in the baseball art community. Was probably one of the little fanboys following Todd Radom's work. And Nonetheless, I just thought, well, why couldn't we put together use the exact same model for the Meals on Wheels campaign, apply it to small baseball themed businesses and artists, and see if we can't raise some money for some great causes, specifically, the stakeholders of the Negro Leagues. Frank, we met last year when we were doing our campaign for the museum.
Right.
Gosh, Sean, it feels like it's only been a couple of weeks ago, but it's been now 2 months, I think, where Sean asked us what we could do to support the Josh Gibson MVP campaign. And so with the help of a couple of guys, Jason Schwartz and Mike Smith from the baseball card art community, we've put together now a baseball card art tournament and campaign that we call Project JG 20 MVP. And we have 75 artists from around the country, from around the world participating, 5 countries from around the world participating in this campaign. We're in week 8 right now. We've got one more week of our regular season, and then we're moving into our Tournament of Champions next week. So it's been really exciting. It's been really fun. It's been really fast paced. And that's where we're at today.
Well, you mentioned fast paced because this is one of these things that we're looking at that 100 years in the making, and it's an overnight sensation. We're looking at a lot of things that have happened really quickly, but it's a groundswell for things that have been going on for quite some time. So, Sean, we're looking at something that I think is interesting, and we can run from there. The idea that it's no longer National League, American League. We've now included the Negro Leagues along with the National League, American League, Federal League, and all that stuff to be the major leagues of baseball. So when we're looking at the idea of saying, well, the baseball writers said we're no longer going to recognize Kennesaw Mountain Landis as put the name on the trophy, on the MVP award. How does it work for you to say, this is the campaign we're looking at? And again, it kind of happened really quickly. How much work is being done to try and get Josh Gibson's name to be a part of that award?
Well, it's a lot of work. This campaign just ain't start in 2 weeks. This campaign started last year.
Right.
So we have a great marketing team here in Pittsburgh that Ted has been working with here as well. But, it started back in October. Actually, before that, when he first started about this, is back in the summer. So I was reading an article from Ben Walker, and there was a couple former MVP players, which was Terry Pendleton, Mike Smith, and Barry Larkin, who was making a big push to remove Kennesaw Mountain Landis' name off the MVP award. And so as I'm reading the article, the names that we're considering to rename the award after were Frank Robinson, Branch Rickey, and Josh Gibson. We had no clue Josh was even in the runnings.
Right.
So me, I'm a go-getter type person. I was like, look, I called my board, I called my committee. I was like, look, man, I just read this article. I don't know what's going on, but I see we in a race. Let's see how we can win it. And so from there on, we've been on our campaign race since then. And then I met Ted, and when this whole thing started with the card art challenge, is you got that. We don't know exactly when the campaign. We don't know exactly when the announcement is going to be made. But if you follow the Baseball Writers Association, they only meet twice a year, right? They meet during the All-Star week, and they meet during the winter meetings. We don't know if it's going to happen in July, but we're speculating, and this is like our 4th quarter push. And I called Ted up and said, hey, man, what can we do to get a 4th quarter push? And like he said, from Jason and Mike, and we went on. And me and Todd was having a sad conversation about something else, me and Todd. And I was like, hey, man, you should join our tournament.
Yeah.
He was like, okay. So that's how we got Todd in. It was great to get Todd in as well. So, but as Ted mentioned, man, to have over 75 artists. And like he said, this happened within 2 weeks. 75 artists,
right,
and 5 from outside the United States is just phenomenal. And, I will say this to Todd and Ted, I'm blessed to have people like that in our corner because, sometimes people still don't know about Josh Gibson, right? They still don't know about the Negro Leagues. And again, I will say this, of course, our goal is to have his name on an MVP award, right? That's our ultimate goal. But I will say this, these past year, 8 months, we have brought a lot of awareness about Josh Gibson and the Negro Leagues through all the work the artist has done, through the campaign, working with Todd and Ted. We have definitely expanded our brand, and that was one of our main goals. But it's exciting, man. It's just giving people opportunity to learn more about Josh Gibson and these other great Negro League baseball players.
And I think that's the importance of what you guys are doing and the museum as well, to say this has happened, and this was an important part of not just a part of society, but for society in general. So, Todd, when you go back and you look at to do, say, the 100th anniversary patch and those kind of things, how much research is done, and what have you discovered more than just what you thought you were going to find out?
Yeah, I mean, Frank, as I said a little while ago, I've always been fascinated in history, baseball history, and you can't, the Negro Leagues and the, it's kind of the story of America, the good, the bad, and the ugly parts. And the good part is, I'll tell you what, I met Don Motley, Buck O'Neill, and Bob Kendrick back in, I think, 1996, wow. Right? And it's a long time ago. And I was very lucky to have spent a certain amount of time with Buck O'Neill. And I remember him taking me through the Negro League Baseball Museum in Kansas City and explaining things that I of course, had read about, but I could never know. And that's the beautiful part of oral history, especially from such a legendary human being and storyteller like him. But he told me a little more about the economic model, the economic empowerment of the Negro Leagues. And clearly, it filled in the gaps because, to imagine the greatness on the field of a Josh Gibson and to, read about the power and the ball almost getting in a Yankee Stadium and all that, you round that all up. And I think the another thing that I would mention is I designed the 50th anniversary logo for the celebration of Jackie Robinson's historic debut. So this was back in 1997. And I remember sitting in a suite at Shea Stadium, April 15th, 1997. Bill Clinton is, on the field with Rachel Robinson. And I'm in this suite with some business partners of MLB, the Mets. And I'm surrounded by these Negro Leagues guys. And of course, this was a while ago. And we've lost so many of these, great players since then. But I could talk to anybody about anything. So to talk to some of these guys and hear these stories, it further fascinated me. So, so the research answer is, to look at images of newspaper pages is one thing, but to have had the very good opportunity of speaking to these men as human beings and hear firsthand what their stories were and getting to know Sean and, his family's legacy, it gives me a little bit of a leg up and it sparks my imagination.
And one of the good things about what you just said is sometimes when we look at things historically, we see images on a page, words over here, words in an article, images on the screen, and we forget real people. And I know we're doing that now with our media now, that's another story we can get into later, but we forget that we're dealing with actual people. So Tad, when we get to the museum and the things that are being done there, what, if you're going to visit, for example, what will you see, or with the card challenge and those kind of things, what will people bring, or will people see, hey, these are real people, flesh and blood people that had something to do with the fabric of sport?
I think, what they're going to see, at the museum itself is the entire history, and it's just getting more and more rich there. What's been my personal catalyst for growth in this community, it really has been meeting Sean. When we first ran our campaign last year for the museum, I met Sean right beforehand, and Sean was able to really help me understand the big picture of the Negro League's community of stakeholders, including himself, the family of Buck Leonard down in Rocky Mount, North Carolina, who has an amazing 501c3 that they've been doing great work down there as well, the Leon Day Foundation. So Sean really helped me understand that, hey, you can go to the museum and see pictures of these great people, but these great people's families are out here doing great things in their communities. And that's been the big catalyst to me, frankly, in continuing to develop our community of artists as a marketing engine and a revenue engine for the stakeholders of the Negro Leagues as well as themselves. But it's because of the amazing things that they're doing in their communities, the trust that the Josh Gibson Foundation has built in the community of Pittsburgh, the trust that the Buck Leonard Association has built in their community is something that no enterprise level, company could go into a community and buy within, a year of advertising. So what my focus is as a marketer, I believe that advertising can save the world. I believe that marketing dollars, if spent in areas of need in our communities to do great things, help people do great things, help people survive. Spend your marketing dollars that way in our communities, and communities can become empowered and lifted up. And so that's what we're really trying to do, is to create a platform that will attract enterprise level marketing dollars to come help them do. So to me, I'm a baseball nerd through and through, have been since I was a little boy, was always more fascinated by the black and white images of baseball than I was of the polyester, era that I grew up in. But nonetheless, I love the polyester too, Frank. I mean, come on. But nonetheless, what I'm seeing now is the opportunity that Sean has, specifically in his community, to do great things and lift up entire communities of people. So this whole thing is we kind of developed a little hashtag of bigger than baseball, and it is to me. So what you get in the museum is really just a taste of the history. When you realize that the living legacy of the Negro Leagues is still out here and still flesh and blood, and we get to talk to them, and we get to hear stories, we get to see pictures. That's the real stuff.
Well, and it's funny you mentioned that. I had a chance to talk to the great-grandson of Henry Armstrong, the boxer, of a few months back. And Sean, the same basic concept was, I'm going to take the legacy of what he did and make the world a better place. So, and these foundations that people have, the 501c3s and all of that, it's amazing to me because in reality, it's something you don't really have to do. In reality, you can have your own life because someone lived that life before you. But what you and others are doing is taking their legacy and making things better. So elaborate a little bit on what you're doing and some of the other people you're connected with.
Yeah, I will say this. I mean, my grandfather, Josh Gibson Jr., he was the one who actually started the foundation. And so, you have that choice, right? Like you said, to either live your life a certain way. Like I went to college, my major was criminal justice. I could be in law enforcement and doing totally something different. But I think, my grandfather instilled in me at a young age about family values and a family legacy. And so that's why I got involved with the Josh Gibson Foundation. He did all the groundwork, did all the paperwork, and he got everything started for me. And I took it from there. But like you mentioned, I mean, just carrying a legacy is very important to me and my family, because my grandfather used to always say, all you have is your last name, right? You have your name, and you can either make good of it or you can make bad of it. And that's my goal, is to make sure that everybody knows who Josh Gibson is, black and white. And we had some exciting news last year when they integrated Negro League statistics into Major League records. And, when I used to do interviews, some people will say, well, Josh Gibson considered the greatest black ball player of all time. I would say, yeah, that's what you say. And now you can't say that, because now when we look at the stats, Josh will be ranked in several of MLB records. He'll be in the top 5, top 1. Josh's name is going to be up there, as well as the other great Negro League baseball players as well. And so we have a close-knit community, family members that we talk to often. We communicate, we try to work with each other, we try to help each other. And so it's been exciting. I will say this, you know, me and Ted talked about this. The pandemic kind of helped us out, really, the foundation. I mean, we didn't make any money last year being a small nonprofit, but it's not always about money. You know, we had a great time in meeting some great people. I met Todd during the centennial. I met Ted during the pandemic. I don't think, I probably would have met Todd because we was doing the centennial and I met him through a buddy of mine, Danny Torres, but I don't know if I would have met Ted. I don't think if during the pandemic, I know I wouldn't have met Ted. During the pandemic, I know I wouldn't have 75 artists doing the campaign. You know what I mean? So it's just like the Jackie Robinson and the Negro Leagues, bittersweet, right? Bitter because there's no more Negro Leagues. It's sweet because Jackie Robinson crossed over. Same with this 2020 year. It was bitter because it was a pandemic year. A lot of things happened. Black Lives Matter was going on. But then it was sweet on the other end because for me, it got me an opportunity to meet a lot of people that was either not working or working from home, who wasn't doing much and had plenty of time to do a hobby. And so, and I'll bring this up about Todd. Last year, I had called Todd spare of the moment. We were doing a Cleveland Indians last year. We're celebrating our 75th anniversary, right? And so I'm on the phone with these guys from Cleveland, from the Indians and with the Pirates. And there's like, oh, we got some guy in Cleveland who can create a logo. I was like, well, I got a guy too. I don't know if it's short notice if he can do it or not, you know? And I told him who it was. So the one that guys, oh, I know Todd's work. So I remember calling Todd on the phone. It was short notice, right? And I called him on the phone and said, hey, man, I'm trying to create the 75th anniversary logo between the Homestead Grays and Cleveland Buckeyes. I said, man, they get this guy in Cleveland that's doing some work, but I wanted to get you. And Todd was like, short notice, didn't know how, because he's a very busy man, you know. He said, hey, man, we got it. Then he was like, we're going to kick their ASS. I was like, okay, that's the way to go, right? and I will say this, Todd put something together real quick. We shut it over to the Indians, and guess what? We kicked their ASS, and they took Todd's logo. So, but that's the reason why I bring that story up is just that having those relationships. You know what I mean? It's having those relationships and friendships. And but it's all good. I haven't met neither one in person yet. You know what I mean? But I know I will. Todd has a daughter, goes to Ohio. We're looking to hook up. Ted maybe come down to Pittsburgh. So, but it's good to have this relationship with people that you never met, but have that love for the Negro Leagues as well as Josh Gibson to help us out. So yeah.
Well, Todd, you know, I'm from the Cleveland area, so I understand what it's like to want to for the Pittsburgh guys to not want the Cleveland things to go well. I understand that completely. So now, Todd, when you get involved in something like this, especially when you get into it so quickly, or we have to do this right away. When you get involved in something and you've got other things going on, how do you maintain the focus on making sure this is, as we say, it's commemorative? So there's a lot that goes into that. How do you maintain the focus and making sure that it ties into modern stuff as well as making sure that it goes back to what's happened in the past?
So a couple of things. First of all, I'd be remiss if I didn't follow up on what Sean said, because, you know, I just can't help but think, especially given everything that's happened in the last year all over the world, to be involved with something bigger than yourself is important.
Right.
And we've all got to make a living. We got to keep a roof over our head, no matter who we are, what we do. But somehow this kind of stuff is, you know, it takes on greater significance to be part of and to be part of this larger team. So to answer your question, Frank, yeah, I mean, you need to, you know, from a visual presentation perspective, make things relevant and ownable and protectable, certainly, and you know, make them appealing for you know, the consumer, if you want to look at it that way. If you're trying to send a message, sell things, or raise awareness, you know, for contemporary eyes. It's kind of interesting too. You know, we have, insofar as Josh Gibson is concerned, a limited number of images, and the ones that really I think are stuck in most people's minds are kind of repetitive. So how do you inject some feeling of life into a black and white photograph, basically, and instill some humanity into that? And it's a little bit of a challenge, but I like to think that, you know, combining imagery with typography and kind of composition and bringing it all into one piece, that's where the rubber meets the road.
Well, and what you mentioned is a perfect thing, because we're all trying to reach back and bring forth what we've seen before. And as you said, and we've seen this in the numerous videos and whatnot, we've seen the same four images because they're not there.
Yeah.
But we know it's bigger and it's more flesh and blood than just these, this guy in his catcher's gear and that's it. There's more that's happened there. So to be able to get, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I'm sorry. You got me excited, Frank, because in
Oh,
reading
please.
about
That's
in reading about the seam heads guys who are putting together, I think, and Sean and Tad, you can expand upon this, but they are statistics are dry numbers on a page and now on a screen, right? But these people, these researchers who are going out and digging and finding artifacts, basically, right? That helps bring the story to life and make it real and tangible in a way that combines with oral history and legacy and knowing what we know. But you got me really excited because, as a researcher, I know that, listen, the Negro Leagues were covered by the Black community in terms of, Black newspapers, the Chicago Defender leading the way back then. And part of the reason that there are a few images are because, basically the white media, for the most part, didn't send photographers out to capture these images. So, in a visual repetition can really lend itself to good impressions, I think. So the fact that we, the few images that are baked into our minds, not so much for Sean as a member of the family, but for people who, for the rest of us, perhaps, that those images of Josh Gibson give us this, it kind of reinforces certain good stereotypes. Catcher, dependable, muscular, that look in his eye and that smile on his face when we see a smile, imparts some humanity to somebody who has not been with us for a long time.
Well, I'm thinking of what you just said there. What, as far as marketing, we were talking about marketing this idea, marketing these concepts. What challenges have you faced or overcome in getting this done? Because we're talking about something that maybe not enough people, I don't know how many people in the non-baseball world know that we've accepted the Negro League stats and accepted them as being another major league. What challenges have you faced getting this to people, and what have you overcome, and what's worked well?
That's a great question. I think that what we've accomplished really well is what none of us individually can do on social media. We all know that social media is a great tool for marketing, but social media, having grown up in the digital, ad tech business, there's not much digital advertising technology out there that's really in your favor as an advertiser. It's in their favor as the people who are selling the ads. But what we've accomplished is bringing together over 100 artists now around the world who've participated in a number of different campaigns for the museum, for the Buck Leonard Association, and now for the Josh Gibson Foundation. The strength in numbers is really a beautiful thing. And so our proof of concept has been proved over and over again that if you bring multiple small businesses together, multiple people together who are value aligned with an organization that's doing incredible things in their community, it's going to be successful in getting people's attention. It's successful in getting earned media, getting write-ups from magazines, getting webcast opportunities. It's successful in attracting that kind of attention. The last thing to fall into place for this type of concept is sponsorship dollars. But this whole concept is developed to be a benefit and an asset to the small businesses, the artists who participate, obviously the organizations, the 501c3s that participate, but also to the sponsors. So what we've successfully done with 75 artists around the world is generate millions of organic ad impressions. All of our promo images are designed to put a sponsor logo in there. So that's the last thing to fall into place. But it represents a shift in thinking from I think some brave advertisers who are willing to move from a model of we're going to beat you over the head with our ads to one that really sees the value in lifting up groups of people, entire communities of people. So successfully generating millions and millions of impressions for the cause.
Well, Sean, looking at that and expanding upon it, the idea of this is bigger than you, this is a family thing. But when we look at the Negro Leagues and we look at how they were able to survive, it was bigger than just the players, it was community. So as we've done this, and if you've gone back and you've made this work, what relationships have you uncovered or maybe didn't really realize were as important as they were between former players and then their families and communities have gone from there? Anyone surprise you that you've run across and went, wow, I didn't know that they were still doing something? Or as you mentioned, Buck Leonard, they're doing something on their end, they're doing something on their end. How has this community grown from what you're doing in this project?
Well, no, I'm not surprised because I kind of work with everyone. So I got a lot of them started. So we kind of started our foundation about, like I said, 18 years ago. I met Rose, and about that same time, I met Rose, which is Buck Leonard's daughter first. But I met Linda, Satchel Paige's daughter. Then we go from Double Duty Radcliffe to Turkey Stearns to Leon Day, and so on and so on. So, but we did start a Negro League Family and Players and Alliance, a Negro League's Families, Players and Alliance. So that'll be kicking off soon. And again, that's just more of us to be a voice of one, right? We all have our own representations. We have an agent. Page family has an agent. Buck O'Neill's family, Buck Leonard family has an agent. So, but the one thing I will say is that we're a close-knit family community. We stick together. If I see anything of Buck Leonard being done without their knowledge, I'm gonna let them know, and vice versa. Same with the Page family. So, and we try to help each other. And I would say this: I'm the catalyst for that. I really try to stay focused. I'm the youngest of all the family members, so they kind of lean on me and for my guidance, and I appreciate that. I make sure that they're straight. I make sure they don't get messed over, and I know Josh Gibson has that platform, and so does Satchel Paige, but I use my platform to help others, and I've been doing it for a very long time. Like with Ted, if Ted met the Buck Leonard family through me, and the rest of the families, I could have just kept Ted to myself, but I didn't do that. I don't do stuff like that. But yeah, it's God blesses you when you bless others. I truly believe that. And so, and I'm in a community where I'm giving back all the time. I have over 300 kids in my program. So we've been serving inner city kids for a long, long time, man. So that's what we do. We give back. And I've been taught that at a very young age. And so through our foundation, it's just been blessed to be able to work with some great people, have some great kids come through our foundation. As I mentioned, last year was a pandemic year, but we do have 3 great fundraisers coming up this year. In August, we'll be hosting our Josh Gibson Youth Classic, ages 12U. Then in October, we'll have our big fundraiser, which is we call it our Josh Gibson Celebration Weekend. We're hosting a symposium October 29th, and we're bringing in national speakers, as well as on October 30th will be our Black Tie Gala. And so we usually give out an award called the Josh Gibson Legacy Award, and that's usually given to a former Major League Baseball player for their work off of the field. And our past recipients been from Buck O'Neill to Lou Brock to Juan Marshall to Barry Bonds to Monty Irvin and to the Clemente family and Reggie Jackson. And they've all come in town to receive the award. And so, we just, as far as the close-knit in the families, I will say this before I leave this. The one thing I don't like is when you try to get family members to impose that they are somebody they're really not, right? So if you say you're such and such, and you say you're related to them, and I've been around, like I said, I've been around a long time doing this, and I pretty much know who is who, right?
Right.
And, you know, there's a couple guys that came across that are related to such and such, and I have no shame in calling them out because I take this seriously, and I'm trying to protect not just my brand, but the other family's brands as well. We don't need no bad apples. So if you say you're related to somebody, you better be legit. You better be legit. So,
well, and it's interesting because that's going to tie into the question I asked Todd. And going on to a few things we've talked about, you know, we mentioned Tad mentioned the polyester era, and then, you know, Todd, the book that you wrote about the uniforms and whatnot. I'm from growing up in the Frank Robinson, you know, the oranges, red uniforms with the Indians. So I understand both of those comments. But when we go back and we look at things like as we say, pictures on a page, those kind of things. What about that? The uniforms, the images, the logos, those things that we don't know or we don't get to see that often. We're talking about commemorative patches and things like that. When you look at that from an artistic point of view, how important is that, especially when we're talking about a museum? When we're starting to draw all these things together, have we uncovered some things that maybe, you know, somebody had a patch here or a uniform there, or we're talking, you know, the Buck Leonards and the people that, you know, we've things have been passed down from family to family that maybe we didn't know about. How have we been able to utilize those kind of things artistically, or have we been able to?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, storytelling is a very timely topic right now, right? And to help tell the stories of these players and hopefully generate some revenue when the opportunities present themselves. I think that, to your point, Frank, like getting the details right and doing the research is really important. Now, it's important to point out the fact that in the case of the Negro Leagues, because of finances being what they are, you quite often had uniforms that were very under-designed. They didn't have, you know, a lot of bells and whistles in terms of the graphics, the lettering, the details. And some of them, you know, you look at some of the Homestead Grays uniforms that Josh Gibson wore, some of the Kansas City Monarchs uniforms, like these guys were, you know, the top of the heap. And so they changed uniforms every year, couple of years. I'll give you an example that I think points out to some interesting details. For people who don't know, the Homestead Grays, you know, lived this split life between Josh Gibson and Sean Gibson's Pittsburgh and Washington, D.C. And you know, there are visual clues that can tell you where they were at a certain time, right? A sleeve patch, for instance, this kind of a thing. But also because so few of these uniforms survived as artifacts, you know, we're looking at pictures and we're piecing together, you know, little bits and pieces of information. So, you know, last thing with that is the fact that people find it really hard to believe that teams did not have logos for the most part. White teams or Negro Leagues teams until well after World War II, with few exceptions, of course, but because there were a few things sold. So if you were a fan of the Homestead Grays or the Kansas City Monarchs, it's not like you're going to buy in 1942 a replica jersey or an ashtray or a cap, right? Exactly. So the need for logos really wasn't there, other than as a pure identifying symbol. So researching the stuff, getting that right, knowing what goes where, and kind of putting forward the you know, the authentic aspects of that wherever possible helps tell the story.
I'll add to that.
And it's something that we're looking at. Oh, please go ahead.
Yeah. One of the things that I think has been a real treat and truly really special to this campaign is the fact that Sean has shared a cache of images with our artists, many of which haven't been seen by the majority of the public, and including his 1941 MVP trophy that he won in Mexico. Puerto Rico. I thought, you know, it's funny. There's so many different things. I was wanted to get my facts right on that yesterday, and so I was researching it, and I saw two different stories. So, you know, really, again, there's the story of the Negro Leagues right there. It's really difficult to pin down exactly what's what. That's what's been so great about the work of Larry Lester and the guys at Seamheads and their collaboration now with BaseballReference.com. But But anyway, what I was saying is the fact that Sean's been able to really personalize this campaign, I think, for a lot of people and help people really understand that and grasp that Josh is a man. Josh is a man. He's not just these pictures. Right. And the thing I think that was probably gave me the biggest goosebumps so far, Sean, was when you told me about the man who contacted you from Puerto Rico, who said, was it right? Tell that story. That made him human.
Yeah. So and it actually touched me too. So I did Josh was inducted into this Puerto Rico. He got an award in Puerto Rico. So we did a Zoom call from Puerto Rico. And so they had a surprise guest on there. And what it was a guy whose father, either he managed or he played with Josh. And him and Josh was real close. And so he found this postcard that Josh Gibson sent to his father. And it's in Spanish. And it says, like, to the guy's name, to my brother, in Spanish. But like I was telling Ted, the unique part about it was, as he put it on the screen, I look at the date. And the date was January 1st, 1947. And so if you know the history of Josh died January 20th, 1947. So I was saying to this massive man, this is probably one of the last things that Josh wrote. So he died 19 days later. So that was a very touching piece there when I saw that. And I think the significance is because of the date. You know what I mean? You look at that date, it's 1/1/47. He died 1/20/47. So, but yeah, it's a postcard. It's a postcard. Yeah. So I was telling Ted that story. So that was very touching to see that, and to see, like I said, wow, this is probably one of the last things that my great grandfather wrote before he passed away. At least one of, he might have did a few more things before that, but I'm pretty sure that's top 5 easily before he died.
Well, and one of the things that comes from that is the history and the roots of what you do. And I'm looking at professional players now when they, I'm from Detroit, but I played for the Lakers. And once my playing days are over, I move back to Detroit or whatever. Where was Josh Gibson from?
This is from a small town called Buena Vista, Georgia.
Okay.
It's about population right now is about 2,300 people. It's about 2 hours outside of Atlanta. And it's about 45 minutes from Columbus, Georgia, which is a military base. And so I'm the first Gibson to ever actually go back. I went back there like 2007 and started doing some research. And it was funny because you ever saw a movie Plane, Trains, and Automobiles? I thought that's how it took me to get there. I caught a plane to Atlanta, then I got a shuttle to Columbus. Then they picked me up from Columbus. So it was like a plane, train, and automobile. But it's a very unique place. One street light in the town. And, I went to college and I played basketball. If you had somebody in college that was from the country, you would tease them. You probably got one street light in your community.
Right.
Not ever knowing that I would actually go to a town with one street light. But I will say this, still dirt roads. And this is a personal story touching, growing up in the North, I've never seen cotton, right? We've seen cotton as, slave movies and movies. I've never seen cotton before in my life. I go to Buena Vista, and no lie, man, we're going somewhere, and I see this cotton field. You would have thought I saw gold because I stopped, man. I had to stop the car because I've never actually seen a cotton field. And it was very touching to see that and start thinking about the past. But I will say this, that small town, man, they really embrace Josh. And when you first come in, it says Buena Vista, home of Josh Gibson. They have a water tower, home of Josh Gibson. The community center is named after Josh Gibson. There's a street named after Josh Gibson. So, it's a mixed community, predominantly African-American. They still have dirt roads there. But it's so funny because they have 3 restaurants, a soul food restaurant, a Mexican restaurant, and a Subway, which they consider a restaurant. But as a small town, what I really understood was they have 5 churches. You know, I think they have more churches than police officers.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's the beauty of it, is like, okay, no matter how small we are, we're going to worship God. And they have 5 churches in a small community. So that's his town, man. Buena Vista, Georgia. And they love Josh Gibson, man. They love Josh.
Well, it's funny. When I was little, we drove from Ohio to visit some of my parents' friends in Alabama. And yeah, my mom made my dad stop the car, and she went out and grabbed some cotton. You know, it's like, this is actually here. Yeah. But the reason I asked that question, and I'm glad you answered it that way, is that you're in Pittsburgh. And I'm various reasons aside, I'm sure your family set roots in Pittsburgh, the community of where they played, you know, and that's the thing that when we've had this conversation, wherever these, not always, but wherever you came from, the team that you played with, that's usually where you settle down after your playing days, whether it was because the Negro Leagues just disbanded or however you want to put it, went away, but there is a sense of community. And I want to be a part of this community because they've supported what we do. And now you're supporting what they do. So it's interesting that these foundations are based in these towns where, again, the legacy lives on. And I think that's very important to understand for people, is that we all say, you know, Tad's wearing his Mariners hat there, but how connected are the players to the community, and will they stay there when they're done? And not to say they're not, I'm just saying, you know, they do fine work with children's hospitals and whatever, but when they're done, are they done? And what I see with what you're saying, Josh, or Sean, I'm sorry, I'm a part of that community. And I think that's very important for us to see, is that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say this again. I think, you know, Josh died at a young age. He died at 35 years old. And so he probably couldn't even want to, even if he had a chance to go back after he played, it was no, you know, he didn't live that long. You know what I mean? And so all his roots are here in Pittsburgh. So, but I will give an example, like, for instance, like Buck Leonard. You know, he grew up in Rocky Mount, North Carolina, and he went back to Rocky Mount, North Carolina. Okay. So that's one person that I do know that he played for the Grays. He could have stayed here in Pittsburgh and made his home here in Pittsburgh, but no, he went back to Rocky Mount. I don't know if Josh would have done it or not. Josh did it at a young age. So it's funny because it's funny you asked that question, because when I go to Buena Vista and I hang around some of the guys and I talk about the town, and they say, listen, man, you could have been living here. Yeah,
right.
You could have been living here.
What you didn't know, right.
Right. So to answer your point, if Josh would have lived until his 70s or 80s, who knows? He would have went back to Buena Vista.
Well, I appreciate the fact that, you know, you are doing it there. And again, and you went back to his hometown and understand that connection as well. And I think, Todd, that kind of leads into some of the things that we're talking about as far as putting it all together, because the word means something and the image means something, but it has to come from someplace. So when we're putting it all together, again, the commemorative patches and things like that, what is the process they are saying this has to be true to everything?
Yeah, it's a good question, Frank. And I always say that, you know, creating something like we're talking about here, it's like building a house. You've got to put down a good foundation, and you could put up a Cape Cod style structure. You could put up a Frank Lloyd Wright looking house. You could put up pink shutters, whatever you want to do. But without that foundation, whatever's on top of it might well fail, right? So how do you get a good foundation? Starts with research, which is what we've been talking about, and understanding the fact that, I always say with what I do, Pittsburgh, where Sean is very different from Seattle, where Tad is. And it's different from Cleveland, right? Or Vegas or New York. And to understand the fact that I think, particularly in sports, fandom lives and breathes at a very local level. And that, in this, bizarre country that we live in, that's united by 50 states, and we don't have a lot in common in a lot of ways, which is a much bigger conversation. embracing that locality and starting with the research and really tapping into what makes a fan base tick is really where I start my work.
Well, and it's interesting you say that, because it's not just by state. It's like, okay, we're using Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, not the same place in the same state.
Totally right.
Cleveland, Columbus, Cincinnati, same state, 3 completely different places. So yeah, so you have to be able to focus on that particular focus, as opposed to say, I was talking to somebody from Oklahoma the other day, and they said, well, I'm from Oklahoma City. Oh, well, then no, you don't understand. Oklahoma City is different than Norman. It's different than Enid. They're all different communities. So you bring different things to the table. Exactly. Well, Tad, as we're looking at how we're putting this all together and how this is being put out to the people, what are we looking at as saying, okay, we've talked about the number of the ad hits and all these things that are there, but how do we carry this forward from here now? Or do we have to do 101, or do we have to do next year? Or is it where we've made it so now we've got momentum?
I think it's the last one there. We've created something we thought was going to be a one-time campaign back in October for the museum. We realized that it worked really well. We realized that there immediately was going to be some additional opportunities to help more stakeholders of the Negro Leagues, like Sean. The very first thing that we actually did back in November was from our community, we crowdsourced a logo for the Buck Leonard Association. They've never had a logo themselves. Sorry, Todd, we didn't. You didn't answer the open call to that one, man.
I don't know if I knew about it, Ted.
Yeah, well, you know what? That's because our reach wasn't good yet. But nonetheless, the act of building that logo was really amazing, because it wound up being a collaboration between 2 different artists for the final product. So we've created something really special in this community where, pre-pandemic, there was a community of people on social media, a community of baseball artists, and they knew of each other by and large. Very few of them were talking to each other. And now we're seeing collaborations left and right. We're seeing, celebrity artists like Todd Radom jump on the ball caps and bagpipes webcast from Scotland, right? Where, Bubba on Baseball is sitting in a 200-year-old toilet, doing his webcasts from Scotland.
It's true.
Yeah, that's a true story. So it's been really amazing to see the community come together and to really rally, and it just comes down to values. When people are value aligned and they come together, they can do great things. So the way that this campaign works, we're dropping cards every day. In fact, this is the last week, I think, of our big, like I said, regular season push. So we're going to be dropping 19 cards this week. And if you follow along on Twitter at NLBMart, you'll see all these cards get dropped. You'll have a chance to engage with them, like them, share them. That's how the artists get votes. And then at the end of every week, we have voting at NLBMark.com. So it's been really fun to see the community get engaged, to see the artists supporting each other. In fact, I remember seeing a tweet on that. Somebody actually said, wow, this is great. I'm growing my audience more by sharing other people's work, not mine. And I'm like, that's how it works, man. So, it's been really special. And I think that, what we're really trying to do is work directly with Sean, work directly with Rose, to make sure that the platform that we're building is serving their purposes, while at the same time serving the purposes of all the artists that participate. So after this campaign, which will wrap up, we're going to crown a winner on the Monday before the All-Star game. And we're going to get to that winner with a group of really impressive celebrity judges, So we're going to be sharing a lot of that information next week as well. But after this campaign wraps up, what we're really going to be doing is going back and post-mortem this thing, make sure that we correct the things that didn't go well, make sure that we expand the things that went really well, and come back with probably another campaign similar to this one next year for the Thunder Twins, the 50-year anniversary of the Hall of Fame induction of Josh and Buck Leonard. So sky might be the limit with us. And I think that, we had to cap this campaign at 75 artists. We started off with just over 40, but the response has been incredible. And that was the same thing that we experienced during the first campaign too. So sky's the limit, Frank.
Well, as we're continuing that push, and we're talking about All-Star Weekend and all that, as we mentioned, getting the baseball writers together and whether it'll happen, whether it won't. Sean, give us an idea of the push of what the significance would be of having Josh Gibson's name as the MVP award. What does that mean to you?
Well, like I would say, I think the ultimate, of course, is the Hall of Fame, right? Josh is in the Hall of Fame. I was 2 years old when it happened, so I don't know too much about that. This MVP award would be probably the most gratifying and significant in my lifetime, to rename that in my family. And so I want to say this and talk about this. When we talk about the MVP, it's not really just about Josh Gibson, okay? So if you know the story of Kennesaw Mountain Landis, he denied over 3,400 men an opportunity to play in the majors. Josh is representing all 3,400 of those men. And so to us, it's bigger than Josh. It's all the player. So if they name the MVP award after Josh Gibson, Josh would be carrying himself as well as the 3,400 men who were denied the opportunity. So it's bigger than that. And so the most important thing is that we know Branch Rickey's story. We know Frank Robinson's story. But Josh Gibson never had that opportunity. Frank had that opportunity because of Josh Gibson and Satchel Paige and guys like that, right? And now, since the stats are coming out, we see where Josh is ranked, not just in black baseball, but against some of his white baseball players. We see where Josh is ranked in home runs. Like I saw one stat where Josh led the Negro Leagues 11 times in home runs, second behind Babe Ruth, who led the majors 12 times. His OPS is second, first and second. His slugging percentage is in the top 5. And so when you look at his statistics, we can speculate that Josh Gibson would have won the MVP in the majors a few times, right? But it also, for me, it's more of a poetic justice, right? Redemption. And so it's like, how ironic would it be for someone like Josh Gibson to replace the same man who denied him the opportunity to play in majors.
Right.
And so our story is bigger than just Josh Gibson's name on the MVP award. It's the history, man. It's the history what Kennesaw Mountain Landis did, denied these players. It's what Josh is going to represent if his name is on that award. And so that's why I want people to understand, it's not like we're just had this campaign just to have his name on the award. It's bigger than that.
Right.
It's bigger than that. And so with the help of Ted and Todd to get it out there and these other artists, it's been great. So we do have a website. Our hashtag is JG20MVP. Our website is jg20mvp.com. We have a petition. You can sign the petition. It's our website. It's a great site. You can see all the work that's on there that's done by the artists as well. But it's a great campaign because, one, we didn't even know he was in the runnings. So for us, usually you start a campaign because you started it. We started the campaign because we heard Josh was in the runnings. And don't get me wrong. I mean, like I said, Frank is the 2-time MVP winner in both leagues, right? Branch Rickey, we know what he did. He broke the color barrier. But you look at Josh's story, and to me, an MVP is more what you've done on the field as well as off the field. You know what I mean? It's a well-rounded. I mean, look at Josh's life, man. I mean, his wife died at 18 years old, giving twins to their kids. They were twins. The twins were named after Josh and Helen. He actually wanted the doctor to save his wife, but the twins go. So here you are, 19 years old, trying to play baseball, segregation's going on, and you got twins. And so when people try to tell the comparisons between the Major League Baseball players and the Negro League Baseball players, I used to always say is like, you know, Major League Baseball players, they had an easy road. Easy road. They get up in the morning, get dressed, drink their coffee, and go right to the game. Negro League Baseball player had a lot of challenges, man. They had death threats. They couldn't go to certain hotels, couldn't go to certain restaurants. MLB players have to deal with that. So before you even got to the game, you already had stress on you. And to be able to still perform at a high level speaks volumes of their talent. And so as we wrap up the MVP piece, it's just more of, I just want people to focus on, because I see people say, well, Josh never played in the majors. I'm like, come on, we know that, man. Like, you don't think I know that? We know he didn't play in the majors. It's not about that. It's about him being the person that replace the guy who denied him that opportunity. Not just him, but the other 3,400 men. And that's what our campaign is about.
Well, and I think that pretty much wraps it up the way that we should. We're talking about the significance of more than just one little thing. And I think that's what the project that you're all involved in is, more than just a museum, more than just a man, more than just an ideal. It's a lot of things that we have to consider. And I'm glad that you guys are doing this, because I think we need to get that conversation out there. And as we've all mentioned, it's more than just this little piece. That conversation carries on not only today, but going back to the Negro Leagues, and then moving forward to where we go from here. So guys, thank you very much. I appreciate you being on. I will make sure we get all your contact information, everything in the headings here. And it's been a great show, and I'm glad that you've been here. Thank you very much.